Don't have to. Hi there, Flo.
Hi, Catherine.
We're going to start with Ukraine, that controversial referendum in Crimea coming up and making the international papers.
That's right. What a lot of the press is focusing on today is a meeting between Ukraine's interim prime minister and Barack Obama. That took place yesterday. It's on the front page of the Wall Street Journal today. And in that meeting, Barack Obama gave his full support to the new Ukrainian government. It was very critical of what Obama called Russia's incursion into Crimea, calling it a violation of international law. Now, the U.S. and the EU are both trying to put pressure on the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, the EU is counting on German Chancellor Angela Merkel to work her magic. And there's a very interesting article today in the International New York Times about Merkel. Now, she's known to have quite a close rapport to Putin because, after all, she grew up in East Germany. She speaks Russian fluently, and according to this article, she can really understand his worldview because of her background. Now, she's talked to him on the phone at least 4 times since Russian forces infiltrated Crimea on February 28th. But this article says the limits of her close relationship with Putin are really being tested right now, and reportedly, she's increasingly exasperated with him.
Exactly. And we have just had news coming into the newsroom in the last couple of minutes. Angela Merkel saying that military action is not the answer to the situation in Crimea. She's also said the territorial integrity of Ukraine cannot be put into question. Those are the latest announcements from Angela Merkel, who you were just mentioning there. Back to the papers, the International New York Times has got a cartoon that's focusing on the diplomatic consequences of the crisis.
That's right. To understand this cartoon, I've actually pulled out a photo from 2009. You have to go back a couple of years. You can see the Hillary Clinton. She was Secretary of State then. She's joking around with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. What they have in their hands there is a mock reset button, so symbolizing a fresh start in their relations. Well, take a look at this cartoon in the International New York Times today. You can see Vladimir Putin there with another reset button, but he says, I have my own reset button, and on it is written 1956. That's the year the Soviet Union crushed the Hungarian uprising, so a very different kind of relationship there.
A very cerebral cartoon as well. Thank you for explaining that one. We're going to move on to another story now, the protests in Turkey. We have heard of another death overnight.
That's right. These protesters are getting a lot of attention in the press. I pulled out, first of all, an article from the Wall Street Journal that's talking about how there's fear that these protests could really increase over the days and weeks to come. Now, these protests broke out after a funeral that was held for a young teenager who was hit in the head by a gas canister back in June during anti-government protests. Now, according to this article, the clashes that are going on right now really underscore an increasing polarization of the country, and it reminds us that very crucial local elections are going to be held at the end of the month on March 30th. Now, I pulled out an article from Hurriyet as well, the Turkish paper, that talks about how Turkey is sliding into chaos. Things are gradually getting out of hand. This article is very critical of the Prime Minister Erdogan. He spoke out against the demonstrators, but he didn't even mention the young man who was killed. And he's currently entangled in a massive corruption scandal and has drawn criticism for passing sweeping laws that would really tighten internet freedom, etc. So this article says that if his party, the AKP party, comes out ahead in those elections I was telling you about, well, you can expect more unrest.
Okay, let's talk about the missing Malaysian Airlines plane. Still seems to be absolutely no trace of it at all, and the newspapers reflecting growing frustration about that.
That's right. It's on the front page of The Independent today that says that tempers are flaring 5 days after the search has started. Now, Malaysian authorities are drawing a lot of criticism for the way they're handling the whole thing, and a lot of papers are still focusing on the fact that a jet like this could go missing. And so the Wall Street Journal looks at other planes that have vanished throughout aviation history, some that were found, some that weren't. For instance, famously, Amelia Earhart, she crashed into the Pacific Ocean in 1937, and her plane was never found. Now, as
very different era, though, wasn't it?
Very different era,
Not the same technology back then.
Absolutely. And as you can imagine, unfortunately, in times like this, there are a lot of conspiracy theories that are flying around, and the Daily Beast has a list of them if you're curious. It's pretty bad taste, though, in my opinion.
Okay, well, let's end with something completely different then. A political scandal in northern Italy. Do tell more.
Right. This is pretty incredible. This is a female politician in the region of South Tyrol. Now, that's in northern Italy. She's been accused of using taxpayer money to buy sex toys.
Interesting use of public funds.
Exactly. Now, her name is Julie Meyer, and she bought 36 euros worth of sex toys. Now, she says these items were bought as a joke birthday present for a friend, claims that she never tried to claim them back as a cost. But according to this article that you can read in The Telegraph, this is just one in a latest string of a lot of scandals across Italy. And according to a recent report, corrupt officials cost Italian taxpayers 2 billion euros in 2013. And this article has all sorts of funny examples of other politicians trying to reclaim things, like one bald guy who tried to get a hair dye paid back for.
Goodness me. Okay, plenty of that in the Daily Telegraph today. Thanks very much, Florence Villemino, with a look through the international press. Short break now here on Live from Paris, but do stay tuned. We've got a special report coming up from Vietnam on the anniversary of an historic battle.